The West has long viewed Iran as a strategic threat, primarily due to its location, ideology and regional influence. Yet despite decades of sanctions, isolation and even covert operations, Iran has remained resilient. This endurance is not accidental. Iran's historical legacy as a proud civilization, dating back to the Persian Empire, has instilled a national identity deeply rooted in resistance and self-sufficiency. Western powers often underestimate the cultural and psychological dimensions of Iran's survival. Unlike other regional players whose governance models may collapse under external pressure, Iran's political system has been hardened by revolution, war, and constant adversity. It operates on a unique blend of nationalism, religious identity, and strategic pragmatism. The assumption that Iran would bow to economic or military pressure ignores the lessons of its past. It has never been easily conquered, nor has it willingly aligned itself with foreign demands. That spirit remains its strongest defense today. Iran's unique geography also plays a critical role in its defiance. Bordered by multiple nations and sitting astride the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point for global oil shipments, its position gives it leverage that few can match. Western strategies often neglect how geography shapes power. Any attempt to destabilize Iran risks regional escalation, affecting not only neighboring countries but also global markets. This makes a full-scale military confrontation incredibly costly. Moreover, Iran has fortified its geography with asymmetrical military capabilities, from missile arms to proxy networks spread across Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. These assets create deterrents not easily neutralized by traditional military means. Western policymakers often find themselves trapped in a paradox, wanting to curb Iran's influence without igniting a wider conflict. This geographical advantage, combined with Iran's strategic patience and ability to play the long game, makes it a formidable opponent that cannot be easily broken by conventional force or isolation. Sanctions, while damaging, have not achieved their intended goal of regime change or behavioral transformation. Instead, they have contributed to the evolution of a resistance economy in Iran, promoting domestic production and economic self-reliance. Although this has resulted in hardship for ordinary Iranians, it has also fueled a sense of collective defiance against what many perceive as unjust aggression. Iran's leadership skillfully uses sanctions to foster unity and nationalism, painting the West as imperialist and antagonistic. This narrative resonates deeply within a population that still remembers the 1953 CIA-backed coup that overthrew Prime Minister Mossadegh. The memory of foreign interference remains alive, reinforcing the belief that resistance is a moral duty. While sanctions can cripple an economy, they often strengthen the resolve of a people if the pressure is perceived as unfair or exploitative. In Iran's case, sanctions have served less as a tool of control and more as a rallying cry for perseverance and resistance. Iran's political system, while heavily criticized in the West, possesses a remarkable internal coherence. The Islamic Republic blends theocratic and republican elements in a way that has created a self-sustaining governing structure. The supreme leader, with religious legitimacy, ensures continuity and ideological consistency, while elected bodies like the parliament and president provide a degree of popular representation. This duality allows Iran to maintain control while giving the appearance of democratic engagement. Western observers often misread the nature of Iranian politics, expecting popular discontent to naturally lead to regime collapse. However, Iranian political life is more complex. Periodic protests and internal debates do occur, but these are part of a broader system that absorbs and adapts to pressure rather than imploding under it. The political elite, though fragmented, shares a fundamental consensus on resisting Western domination. This ideological unity at the top, combined with mechanisms of control below, ensures the regime's survival even in turbulent times. Western interventionism has backfired in the Middle East repeatedly, and Iran has learned from every case study. From Iraq to Libya to Syria, the destruction wrought by foreign interference has been devastating. Iran positions itself as a force of stability in contrast to the chaos left by Western military actions. This narrative is not without truth. In Iraq, the fall of Saddam Hussein removed a major enemy of Iran and allowed Tehran to extend its influence. In Syria, Iran's support of Bashar al-Assad preserved its strategic corridor to Lebanon and Hezbollah. Far from being isolated, Iran has embedded itself into the political and military fabric of multiple regional conflicts, often emerging stronger as a result. Western powers often miscalculate the costs of disrupting Iran's influence, only to find that vacuum filled by even more unpredictable elements. In this regional chessboard, Iran is not just surviving, it is playing several steps ahead. Iran's soft power, often overlooked, is another tool in its arsenal. While Western governments focus on military and economic metrics, Iran has cultivated influence through cultural, religious, and ideological channels. Through media outlets like press TV, religious pilgrimages, and pan-Islamic rhetoric, Iran reaches hearts and minds across the Shiite world and beyond. Its support for Palestinian causes and resistance movements gives it credibility among Arab populations, even those whose governments oppose Tehran. Unlike the West, which often comes with military bases and economic demands, Iran frames its presence as one of solidarity and struggle. This narrative finds resonance in regions where colonial memory is still fresh. Iran's messaging taps into a broader anti-imperialist sentiment, allowing it to punch above its weight diplomatically. While hard power can be measured in tanks and missiles, soft power operates through symbolism and sentiment, areas in which Iran has been far more successful than many in the West acknowledge. Another reason the West cannot easily break Iran lies in its scientific and technological resilience. Despite sanctions aimed at crippling its development, Iran has made significant progress in fields like nanotechnology and missile development. Its nuclear program, controversial and heavily scrutinized, demonstrates a capacity for scientific innovation under pressure. Western intelligence agencies have often been surprised by how quickly Iran has recovered from setbacks, such as cyber attacks or assassinations of nuclear scientists. This resilience stems from years of cultivating domestic talent and reducing dependency on foreign expertise. Iran's universities, research institutions, and military R&D have grown in sophistication, often fueled by the very restrictions meant to halt them. The harder the restrictions, the more determined the response. This phenomenon mirrors what happened during the Cold War. Isolation and containment led to innovation. In Iran's case, the pressure has forged a technologically capable state that continues to defy expectations through self-reliance and ingenuity. The role of religion in Iran's political framework is often misunderstood in the West, which tends to view secularism as the only path to modern governance. However, Iran's Shia Islamism offers a powerful unifying ideology that blends governance, justice, and resistance. Unlike Sunni-based movements that often fragment, Iran's version of political Islam is institutionalized, with clerical authority deeply embedded in every level of decision-making. This religious cohesion gives the state ideological durability. It's not just a matter of politics, but of divine duty, which is far harder to dislodge with external pressure. When the political is sacred, dissent becomes heresy, not just opposition. This framework also enables the regime to justify long-term strategic patience, endurance through hardship, and martyrdom as noble virtues. While this system is controversial, it is deeply effective in creating societal cohesion during times of crisis. The West, often secular in its worldview, fails to grasp the motivational power of this religious political fusion. Iran also benefits from a shifting global order. The unipolar world, dominated by the United States, is giving way to multipolar competition, where emerging powers like China, Russia, and even regional players like Turkey are challenging Western hegemony. Iran has strategically aligned itself with this trend, deepening ties with Eastern powers who are less concerned with human rights narratives and more focused on economic and strategic interests. The Iran-China 25-year cooperation deal and military coordination with Russia in Syria are signs of a broader pivot. This gives Iran an alternative to the Western-dominated financial and political systems. As the West's moral and economic authority declines in parts of the world, Iran positions itself as an example of defiance against a failing global order. This growing geopolitical flexibility provides Tehran with breathing space and partners who benefit from its survival. In a world no longer governed by one narrative, Iran is no longer as isolated as it once was. Internal divisions in the West have also weakened its stance against Iran. US politics are increasingly polarized, making coherent foreign policy difficult. European countries, while aligned with US sanctions on paper, often seek to preserve diplomatic and economic channels with Iran, as seen in efforts like the Instex mechanism. This lack of unity dilutes the pressure Iran faces. Moreover, Western publics are increasingly skeptical of military interventions after the debacles in Iraq and Afghanistan. This reduces political will to confront Iran head-on. In contrast, Iran's strategic institutions, while not without internal rivalries, often show greater cohesion when it comes to external threats. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Corps, Supreme National Security Council and religious leadership generally operate with a singular objective: regime survival. This asymmetry in political focus, fractured democracies versus a concentrated autocracy, means Iran often has the upper hand in long-term strategic consistency, which is crucial in enduring protracted geopolitical standoffs. The psychological warfare aspect also tilts in Iran's favor. Decades of sanctions, assassinations and sabotage have created a siege mentality that the regime has weaponized effectively. Rather than break the spirit of the Iranian people, these attacks have become part of their national story, another chapter in a long history of resistance. The concept of martyrdom, deeply embedded in Shia theology, turns loss into moral victory. Every setback is framed not as defeat but as sacrifice. This moral framing turns geopolitical conflict into a cosmic struggle far beyond material concerns. The West, by contrast, often lacks this kind of narrative cohesion. Its actions are perceived as pragmatic or cynical, driven by oil interests or political expediency. Iran's story, whether one agrees with it or not, carries emotional and spiritual resonance for many of its people. As long as the regime can maintain that sense of purpose, external pressure alone will never be enough to break it. Ultimately, the West cannot break Iran because it does not fully understand it. The lens through which Western powers interpret Iran, economic leverage, military deterrence, regime change, fails to capture the deeper forces at play: cultural memory, religious ideology, national pride, and geopolitical savvy. Iran is not just a nation-state but a civilizational force with a long arc of history behind it. It has endured empire, invasion and isolation before, and each time emerged more rooted in its identity. The West keeps betting on short-term shocks to disrupt a long-term mindset. That's a fundamental miscalculation. Until foreign powers engage Iran with an understanding of its internal logic, rather than imposing their own, efforts to break it will only deepen the very resistance they aim to eliminate. Iran is not invincible, but it is unbreakable in the ways the West has tried. And that may be the untold truth few are willing to confront.